Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, no matter what part of the world you're in. Welcome to our Integrating with Salesforce webinar. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to walk you through how Decisions integrates with Salesforce. This is one of the many great features of Decision. It's an ability to integrate with other systems. But before we get to the meat of our webinar, I'd like to go over a few background and housekeeping items. For those who are new to Decisions, we are a business process management software that helps non-technical people to easily automate and optimize business processes without needing any code. On this slide are some of our current customers in different sectors, in different industries, to give you an idea where Decision fits. We're equal parts rules engine and workflow. So there's a lot of different problems we can solve across different industries. If you have any specific use cases you'd like to get with us, please let us know. So first of all, I'd like to introduce our host for today's webinar, Kyle Bartner. Say hi, Kyle.
Wow, I'm fumbling with the mute button there. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited about what we have to show you regarding Salesforce and our platform.
And myself, Tyler Haynes. Here are our lovely headshots. I will not allow you to guess our ages, but you at least match a name with the face. We've had the pleasure of meeting many of you on webinars and video calls over the past. But now, we're going to discuss some of upcoming events so you can come experience other events with us, virtually, of course. We also welcome any connections. As you can see, our LinkedIn profiles are below our headshots, so you can please add us there so you can ask questions of us there. So over the next few weeks, we have some exciting things on the horizons. We have beginning and intermediate training. This is a great courses for any new customers or users of Decisions. We also have our case management webinar, which I'm not going to give any details of the case management webinar, as I would just like to have you attend it so you can see the great things about case management in Decisions.
Then upcoming in April, we also have our fundamental and associate certification courses. Now, do note that you will need to complete the fundamental certification before you're eligible for that associate certification. And when y'all are signing up, please make sure you pay attention to what time zone it is offered in, so you could choose the ones that are most convenient for you wherever you're located in the world.
And of course, if you'd like to sign up for any of these events, please go to our website, www.decisions.com, to be able to actually sign up for any of these events. So now we're going to go over today's agenda. First of all, we're going to talk about integrating with Decisions as a whole, as a platform. The second piece, of course, is our integration with Salesforce specifically. Our Salesforce module, which will guide how you install here later. Then we're going to give you a live example. And of course, at the very end, if we have some time, some question and answers. Now, speaking of questions and answers, please everyone find your Zoom panel. If any of you are new to Zoom, which I find less and less people new to Zoom, due to the fact I think the past year Zoom has become the norm for most meetings. So please see your Zoom panel to chat with some of our fellow Decision-Nites who join the call also, so that you can post any questions or see the polls in the chats. They will try to answer the questions live during the webinar, but if you have any, we'll try to answer some live at the end of the webinar if we have any time at the end. So we're looking forward to having you attend today. So now we're going to start moving into the more meat of the webinar.
And as a side note, we do have a poll currently running, which I am about to end. So if you haven't filled that out, please feel free to go ahead and do that. I am ending that polling in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cool, thanks guys. So we will have some different polls throughout the webinar. So as we go along those, we will point out when we have those running. But first, we're going to talk about how we can integrate with Decisions. So before we could talk about Salesforce, we're going to be talking about just in general, how you can integrate with Decisions. So any workflow or rule can be called via API. So you can use Decisions as a headless application purely for backend processes if you'd like to. Decisions can also act as that orchestration layer between multiple systems. By this, we mean that you can connect to multiple applications, then use decisions as your backend logic and routing system. For example, a process could fetch information from an account on Salesforce, then generate a document to send off for signature via DocuSign. This logic would happen within decisions and could be accomplished without any user intervention or UI components. In addition to calling decisions from an external system, you can also create API calls within decisions to call to external systems. So after you define that service URL and that payload that you'll be sending, the call then becomes a drag and drop step that's available in your steps toolbox and can be used in any workflow within your instance of decisions. If you're familiar with our general introduction webinar, then you have seen an example of us using one of these API calls that we have built. In that example, we send an image to Google's vision label detection system and then parse through the return to see how confident it is that our image is an item that we have selected from a drop-down list. Decisions can connect to any system with an open API layer to help with more complex or custom processes in your workflow. And in case you don't know how to actually access those data types/integrations, that will just be on the bottom action bar in your studio side or development side of the platform. Then just navigate to that external services, and then you could see where that add REST service is available. So other than making those API calls from scratch, Decisions also has ready to install modules that will add steps to your toolbox that are applicable to that external system. For example, the DocuSign module has steps to check if a document has been signed yet. PowerShell will allow you to run custom scripts, and the USPS module can offer live address validation. If there's a system you use frequently that we don't have a pre-built module for, feel free to reach out to us or any sales contact at Decisions and let us know. Our dev team is really passionate, and we always want to add more features that our customers will get a lot out of. So just to set the stage a little bit for what we're going to be seeing today, we will be using the pre-built steps from our Salesforce module in order to connect to our instance of Salesforce Lightning. So these can be used to connect to Classic or Lightning Salesforce. Today, we're going to be using our sandbox instance of Salesforce Lightning, and we are currently using the most recent release of Decisions version 6. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm going to pass things over to Tyler so he can help to explain how to set up the Salesforce module within Decisions. And I will be launching a poll right now as well, just to see how many of y'all actually do use Salesforce. So feel free to answer that. And it has just launched. And over to you, Tyler. Explain how we can use this.
Great, thanks, Kyle. So now I want to go through the steps of how Salesforce and Decisions work. So there's really 4 steps of how the integration with Decisions in Salesforce works. You have to install the module, authenticate the Salesforce, create the flow in Decisions, and refresh the token Decisions. Now, installing the module allows you to have access to the steps in the steps toolbox in Decisions once you have installed the Salesforce module. Authentication is what is required for authorizing the token between Salesforce and Decisions. Of course, creating the flow is using the steps in Decisions that you can use in multiple flows. You can reuse it, and then the refresh token needs to be used wherever the Decisions Salesforce module is used, so that you can use it as a subflow. That's best practice, but it allows you to make sure you can refresh the token because Salesforce requires that token to be periodically updated. So now we're going to talk about all the Salesforce endpoints we have connected to our module. We have over 16 endpoints and objects that our module integrates with. You're not going to easily see we have normal, count, price, book, lead, and opportunity. You can take stuff from other systems and update Salesforce without needing a Salesforce developer consultant by using Decision as the integration layer between those systems. It allows you to automatically, without any customization, be able to integrate with Salesforce using Decisions. So next, I'm talking about how to install the module. This is only had to complete it one time. You just have to go to System, Administration, and Features, search for Salesforce under Available Features, and install it. We'll show you where this is later in the demonstration. But as you can see, it also requires your instance to be reset. Now, one question you might have is how much does this module cost? Well, I will tell you that all of our modules are free, so there's no extra cost for the Salesforce module.
The exception for that, of course, is our enterprise module, because that will require an enterprise license in order to download and install. But other than that, the rest of our modules do come out of the box and are ready for you to use whenever you want.
So other things to look for is now we're talking about how the authentication works. So you need your endpoints for a SalesPoint environment, and you can actually connect to both test and prod Salesforce. You don't need to connect to only prod or test. And your customer key and secret key is unique to each environment and comes from Salesforce. So as you can see, we've marked out our customer key and customer secret key here, because I'm sure you don't want to access our Salesforce environment because it doesn't have much. It's a sandbox and doesn't have really good clean data. So the next step in the process is the decision flow and steps. So right here is a sample of steps in decisions. You can see some familiar names and items on the right-hand side, such as create account, create product, find contacts by account, find all quotes. You can drag and drop these steps into your workflow to be able to use in decisions. And one of the great things that allows you to actually configure the inputs. So there's no have to do simple, it's still no code, just drag and drop and be able to use your Salesforce integration out of the box once you install the module. Now we're talking about the refresh token. So the refresh token is a step to automatically refresh a token once the token has expired with Salesforce. Now this step is not searchable within the steps library, so you must just browse to it or navigate to it. It's found under integrations, internal services, and OAuth token service. And it can best use in the subflow, so you don't have to add the step to each flow. It's just add the subflow to the process in the flow that you're working on. So if there's any questions about this, please feel free to use the chat. So now we're going to switch to a live integration and show you actually working in live in practice. And the first thing we're going to discuss is how to install the module and how the authentication works. Now I'll allow Kyle to be able to change his screen to actually show Decisions Studio.
Thank you, Tyler. And I will be ending that polling now. So thank you for those who did fill that out. It looks like about half of y'all use Salesforce and the other half of you don't, in which case, what are you doing at this webinar? And I'm kidding, of course. These webinars are for anyone. So even if you don't use Salesforce, I'm sure you will get something out of it as far as integrations go within decisions. So let me make sure I'm resuming my screen share. And Tyler, if you can walk us through how we actually install this module and set things up, that'd be great.
Great. But thank you, Kyle. So if you want to navigate how to install the module, please go to our, on our left-hand side, you see our folder tree. You can go to System, Administration, and Features. And then once you click on Features, you'll see Installed Modules on the left. Give it a second, as you know, when you're on Zoom plus VPN, it can be slow. So as you can see on the left-hand side, you can see the installed modules we have. As you can see, Salesforce is already installed, of course. On the right-hand side, you can see all other available features. So as normally, when you don't have the Salesforce modules installed, you would scroll down the right-hand side of the screen, available features, down to Salesforce. They are actually alphabetical in order. And then, of course, click Install. And then, as we said earlier, you need to restart your instance after the install. So the next step you have is actually set up the provider and token. So we stay in the system folder and go down to integrations, and then go down to OAuth, and then set up provider. So as you can see, we have both our test and Salesforce production, and then click on edit. So as you can see, you can give it a name, you can give it your endpoint URLs, and of course your customer key and customer secret key. So as you can see, we've not had these in here because we don't want to share our key and our secret key with you all, but that's where you put those into your decisions platform.
And again, this is that provider that we have already added to the system. We do support different versions of that OAuth, so that authentication, whatever system you are using for that. But when you're adding this new provider, in the bottom left, you will see this Add OAuth provider here. And that is how you'll be creating a new one whenever you decide to do that. So sorry for stepping on the toes there, Tyler. If you could explain to us those tokens.
Go ahead. So if you click on the tokens tab and you see that we actually have a token created, if you can go and create a new token, and now you can see you can add token name and link it to your environment you need to, and then request a token from Salesforce.
Okay, and now that we have talked about how to set that up, again, after you install that module, make sure that you reset your instance of decisions just to make sure all those changes do take effect and the module will be working as expected. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to walk into this Salesforce webinar folder that we have over here on the left. And this is the main project folder for the workflows and examples that we're going to be showing today. So just to walk you through what we're going to show, we have 3 examples set up. The first one is going to be us creating an account within Salesforce using decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and open this workflow, and then we'll walk through step by step exactly what is happening and what steps we have used from that module. So just as a reminder, all of the Salesforce steps will be available in your steps toolbox. Just make sure you scroll down and navigate to integration, and then you will see Salesforce available once you install that module. Now, just as a side note, because we did talk about where that OAuth token refresh step was, which if I step into this subflow real quick, you can see that it is just a simple flow where we're refreshing that access token in case our Salesforce step actually fails and needs that token to be refreshed for us to access it. So that is this on exception path we are following there. But I got a little bit off track there. So just to make sure we're on the same page, under integration, and then we're going to internal services here, you will see at the bottom, or when you scroll down, OAuth token service. Open that, and then you will see refresh access token is available as one of your steps. Now, again, because this is in internal services, you will not be able to search for it in the search bar up here. You do have to manually navigate to find that step and drag it into your workflow. So let me close all these real quick. Now let's talk about what we are doing for this workflow. So we're going to start it, have a form displayed to us where we're just going to be inputting a name, and then that name is going to be fed into this create account step. That is then going to create that account within our instance of Salesforce. And again, that is a test environment that we're using, but that doesn't make a difference. It will connect to any instance as long as you have that connection set up correctly. So we're going to debug this flow. So navigating our top toolbar, opening that debugger, going to go ahead and run this, and we can then check out Salesforce afterwards and make sure that our account was successfully created. So the account that we're going to make, I'm just going to call it just as a call or as a reference to that demo that we do, our general introduction demo. Wow, I forgot that for a second. I'm going to be calling this account that we're making Agile Insurance Company. So all I did was just input that into this form here. Going to go ahead and submit it. And again, that input is fed into this create account step. And because that token was refreshed recently, we didn't have an exception, so we didn't have to refresh our token and try this step again. It just went through and created that account. So just going to navigate over to my instance of Salesforce and refresh this to make sure that we did have that Agile instrument or insurance company created as our account. And we could see here that that was created in my instance. So clicking into it, obviously we don't have anything interesting happening here because all we did was just give our account a name. So nothing really that is of much interest. But one of the cool things that we have here is we have a workflow that will actually call decisions and then create an opportunity tied to that account within Salesforce. Now, again, we are keeping all these examples relatively simple, and that's because both decisions in Salesforce are highly customizable and configurable. No instance of Salesforce is going to be the same, so your implementation might be very different than this sandbox we're working with. So we wanted to keep our examples as simple as possible so you can get a better idea of how these steps work, and hopefully that will inspire you to create more complex workflows to integrate with Salesforce within your organization. So in the top right here, we have this button that was created as an action within Salesforce. Now, before I click on it, let's just talk about how we are integrating with decisions. And actually, I will click on this real quick to show that it is going to start a workflow or call a workflow in decisions and display a form for us. And joys of working from home when your VPN takes forever. And there we go, it did load for us. So in the URL, you'll see that we are running that workflow within decisions. So let me just navigate over to our instance again, and then I'm going to walk through step by step what that workflow is before we actually run it, and then how we are connecting to it in Salesforce. So that is this create opportunity for account flow. Now, like I said, in our top toolbar, we had that integration option. So clicking into that, we could get our open API layer where I can actually set up that call. So this is where we're getting that actual URL that we are then using in our Salesforce instance to call this workflow. So going back into decisions, let's talk through what's going to be happening here. On our start step, we do have an account ID. So that is the account ID of that account in Salesforce we're working with. That's going to be passed into our workflow. And then you saw that form that will be displayed to us where we're just inputting a name of an opportunity and then defining that close date. Afterwards, the account ID you can see here will be fed into this create opportunity step, as well as the name of that opportunity, and then it will tie it to that account for us once this workflow ends. So let me just walk over into our object manager within Salesforce so we could talk about this button that we made in this workflow that is kicking off. So that is this decisions button here. And if I go ahead and edit this, you can see that we are just using that URL that we generated when we decided to get the integration details for our workflow. And then we are just merging in that account ID into that call. So that way, when we run that workflow on that start step, it's listening for that field of account ID, and then it will be passed into our workflow. So I'm not a Salesforce dev, so I'm not going to harp on this too much. You guys probably know how to actually use these object managers and all these button links and actions better than I do, but we at least have a working example for this. So going back into that account we created in the top left, we can see it is that Agile Insurance Company. Now I'm going to hit this decisions button in the top right, which again is going to kick off that workflow for us. So I'm going to name the opportunity that we're working with here, keeping with the theme of an insurance company, specifically musical instrument. We're going to say UVA Marching Band Insurance Policy, and shout out to one of our founders who was in UVA Marching Band. And now we are going to say that our close date is tomorrow. We're the best sales reps here. We can close that in a day. So let's go ahead and submit that, and we'll just get the notification that our flow is completed. So nothing really interesting happening there. Back on that account, I'm just going to refresh the page so we can see that that opportunity was created. So we now have our opportunity of UVA Marching Band Insurance Policy connected to our account. And again, that was done by calling that workflow within decisions, which then using that create opportunity step, tied it to the account that we see here. Now, there's one more example that we want to show everyone, and that is we are going to be pulling back information from Salesforce within decisions. And then using that information, we're going to select an account, and then we're going to put in a description and then have that description update in the account. So as you can guess, I'm going to be using the same name for this company or the same example of this account that we're using. So let me just navigate back into decisions now, close out this workflow, and then let's talk about this get accounts and update description flow here. So this we're going to run in our debugger within decisions, so we're not going to have any inputs on our start step. But what we're doing with this step is we are getting every single account within our instance of Salesforce. So once we get all those accounts, we are then passing them into this form, which is going to have a dropdown that lists every single account in there, and then just has a field for me to input a description. After that, from the account that we chose, we'll be getting all of that information, and then we will be using this step of selective update account that we are passing all that information into in order to update that field of description within the account. So in our top toolbar again, I'm going to go into that debugger, and we can go ahead and run our workflow. So get all Salesforce accounts hit. We have our form displayed to us. And in this dropdown, we can see every single account that is in our instance of Salesforce, and this is searchable. So if I look for Agile, I could see Agile Insurance Company. I know that is the account that I just created. And the field that we're going to be updating is the description. So I just want to make sure y'all can see we currently don't have any description for this account. So I'm going to go ahead, and I actually have a blurb that I already wrote out that I'm going to copy and paste. So you don't have to watch me type all day. But our description is going to be insurance company specializing in musical instrument insurance policies, works with public high schools and colleges. Go ahead and submit, and we can see how quickly those steps hit and communicate back with Salesforce. So last time, let's navigate back into our instance and then refresh our page. And moving back over to our details, we can see that our description was successfully pushed to this account, and we can now see our description within Salesforce. So again, we are keeping things fairly simple as far as the examples that we wanted to show y'all today. But this is a fairly powerful module, and there's a few different features as well that we haven't talked about that I'm going to touch on a little bit, and that's mainly the advanced steps. So someone in the Q&A did ask if we have a SoCalled query as an input, and that is that Salesforce object query language. And the answer is yes, we do support SoCalled. So if we go back into integration and our Salesforce module, what you want to do is just drop down this advanced, and then you're going to see two steps that are probably of interest for you. That is that run SoCalled query and then run SoCalled query get JSON. So both of these do exactly as you would expect. The run SoCalled query will allow you to define what query you are sending to Salesforce, and then make sure you have that token ID set up. So it is that token you defined in the OAuth settings. And then once you send that query, you will get your return from Salesforce of that information. And you could use that get JSON to have structured data come back as well. Now, because Tyler and myself are not Salesforce devs, we're not going to touch too much on this run SoCalled query. But again, because every implementation of it is very custom, this will hopefully help y'all if you have any issues with the steps with grabbing custom objects or custom fields within the objects that already exist. So you'll have a lot more granular control over what information you're fetching or pushing to Salesforce using this step, and hopefully you'll have some success with it. All right, folks, so it is currently 2:30, and it looks like we kind of ended a little bit early today here, but that is completely okay. We're just going to go into Q&A since you guys have us here for a little bit longer. So if y'all have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or in our Q&A, and I'm going to be launching the final poll we have as well, just to see what y'all thought of the webinar. Again, this feedback is fairly useful for us so we can improve in the future and hope that we can deliver better content each webinar. But if there are any questions, please, again, feel free to ask them in the chat or in our Q&A, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. And actually, we do have a question that came in. How can duplicate rules be handled within the flow? Example, given the account already exists and Salesforce won't create a duplicate account. So that would be, Martin, that would be logic, I believe, that you would have to be defining within your workflow to check for that duplicate account. So again, because decisions is that workflow component, you can define whatever logic or error handling or exception handling you have to. So if you have a duplicate account like that, maybe you'll have a workflow that will then tweak it a little bit and then change it so that way it's not the exact same account. But there are a few different ways that you could probably do that. I hope that gives you a better idea of how you could use our tool to help with that error handling. And we do have a question in our chat. How can you send messages from Salesforce to the rules engine in the decisions platform? Yeah, so the similar example that we had when we were running that workflow within Salesforce that called decisions, you could basically have either steps for the Salesforce module, grab information, and then pass that information into rules within your workflow. Now, I know that we did not show any workflows that had rules in them, but again, it is a workflow and rules engine. So whatever logic you define for your workflow, if that's rules in routing, as long as you have that information sent in, you can then pass it along those rules to have whatever logic or decisioning made. All right, and we're going to stay on for just a few more minutes, everyone. But thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you guys have any questions, we'll be here for a bit longer. But feel free to contact us either at sales@decisions.com, or if you need support@decisions.com. And feel free to contact us from either of these numbers as well if you'd like to get in touch with one of our sales reps and either further discuss your use case or anything that you have questions about. And we do have one more question, how to integrate with Airship. Yeah, so in order to integrate with any external system, that's just going to be the create data type / integration that we had. And since we have time, I don't mind actually going into the tool and showing you where that would be. So here on the on the studio side of the platform, again, this is that developer side of the platform. You'll see in the bottom right here, we have this create data type / integration. So if I click on that, you're going to see external services then down here. And then if you're calling that as a REST service, then we're just going to go ahead and create that. And this is just where you can define that service URL that you're going to be hitting. So I don't think we have a pre-built module for Airship, but if you have the details available to actually create that API call, once you create it in this way, it will become a drag and drop step available within your workflows. And yes, this webinar is recorded and will be posted on our website whenever we have that recording processed and available. So you'd be using the same thing to send an Airship message. So again, that would just be an API call that you have to make, and then it becomes a drag and drop step in your workflow. We don't have a module for Airship, but if that's something that's really important to you, you could get in touch with maybe our sales or our dev team, and we could talk about how we can integrate with that. Yeah, of course, happy to help, Sean. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and end that poll. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our webinar today and asking these great questions. We will be having another webinar sometime or in the next 2 weeks. Again, that will be on case management. So come and learn how you can use our case editor in order to have stateful workflows within decisions. So signing off, my name is Kyle Bachner, and Tyler, if you want to say bye as well before we go.
Thank you all very much for joining us today.
Wherever you are in the world, have a great morning, evening, or afternoon. And thank you again. Take care.